At a time of massive and unprecedented income and wealth inequality, the Republicans look around them and they say, wow, we got 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society. Very richest people are becoming phenomenally richer. Working people are struggling. What's the solution? Well, obviously, the solution is to give massive tax breaks to the rich and make a very bad situation even worse.
I just saw a clip that I absolutely had to sit down and talk about with you guys. We have all heard the same old song and dance from Bernie Sanders for what feels like a century now, right? It's always the same yelling about the top 1% and the evil rich while he wags his finger at us. It's a tired script, and honestly, most of us are exhausted by it because it just doesn't match the reality of our bank accounts. But today, Bernie Sanders finally met his match. Senator Bernie Moreno, a guy who actually knows what it's like to sign the front of a paycheck, not just the back of one, completely dismantled that socialist narrative using something Washington is usually allergic to: common sense. He didn't just argue with Sanders. He uses real-world business experience to show exactly how the Democrats' Inflation Reduction Act is actually a giant slap in the face to the American working class. You guys are going to love this. Before we get into full breakdown of how he exposed the Rolls-Royce tax credit scam, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell so you never miss a deep dive into the truth. Let's get into the full video.
It is apparently not good enough that the top 1% today own more wealth than the bottom 90%. That is rather phenomenal. But in my Republican colleagues' eyes, the wealthy and the powerful need even more help. 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 90%, just not good enough. We could do better than that. So not only should the very wealthy be asked to pay their fair share of taxes, the Republicans believe that we should give huge tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires.
I think we need to kind of go back in time for just a little bit, not quite as much as in Back to the Future. Let's just go back to 2020. There was an election in 2020. The Democrats gained control of the Senate and the White House. And what's been the result? During the 4 years of President Trump, his first term, it was never better for working class Americans. Real wage growth grew. The middle class was doing better. Our economy was doing fantastic. The Republicans had passed the TCJA, which gave tax relief to all Americans. And we received, and this is very important, the federal government received a record amount of revenue. So even though there was tax cuts for the wealthy was the headline. By the way, that line is as old as dirt, and it's totally false. While the tax rates were cut, tax revenue was at a record level. It would be fascinating if there was just one Democrat that acknowledged that we received a record amount of revenue in the federal coffers. Do you think to yourself, well, wait a second. Like, I'm a business guy. Like, if my revenue was at an all-time high and I was losing money, I'd say we have a huge expense problem. Like, oh my God, how could I get record revenue and yet have record deficits? Why? Because when you give Democrats control of our budget, what happens? I'll give you some examples. When my colleagues talk about how they defend the working class, I think the working class spoke pretty clearly on November 5th of 2024 and said, thank you, but no thank you. So what can happen in my old world of owning car dealerships? Mr. Chairman, you could walk into one of my dealerships, be a multimillionaire, pick out a beautiful custom-made Rolls-Royce Spectre where the audio system upgrade is $21,000. The logoed headrest in the back seat are $1,500. The umbrella with a logo could be 10 grand. You can lease that car. And thanks to the amazing and remarkable policies from the Democrat Party, the federal government will give you a check for $7,500. Think about that for just a second. That is a bill that became law called the Inflation Reduction Act, giving Rolls-Royce lease customers $7,500 lowers inflation, and every one of them voted for that bill. How did that bill become law, you ask? Did it get 60 votes? Rigorous debate? No. They did it through reconciliation. And Kamala Harris broke the tie-breaking vote so that multi-millionaires could have their fifth vehicle parked in Palm Beach with a check for $7,500 thanks to the U.S. taxpayer.
Wow. Can we just take a second to appreciate that math lesson? I don't think Bernie Sanders was expecting to get schooled like that today. Did you catch the most important part of Moreno's argument? He pointed out the biggest lie in D.C., the idea that cutting taxes for people who create jobs somehow steals money from the government. Moreno dropped the hard facts. After the Trump tax cuts, federal revenue actually hit record highs. Think about that. When you let people keep their own money, the economy grows, businesses expand, and the government actually ends up with more in the coffers. But as Moreno said, the Democrats don't have a revenue problem. They have a massive spending problem. If your business is making record money and you're still broke, you're the problem. But the absolute mic drop moment for me was that Rolls-Royce analogy. It perfectly sums up the hypocrisy of the radical left. They claim to be the champions of the working man, the little guy, the underdog. Yet they pass Inflation Reduction Act. With Kamala Harris casting the tie-breaking vote, that literally gives a $7,500 tax credit to a multimillionaire leasing a luxury Rolls-Royce Spectre. Think about that. A guy can walk into one of Moreno's old dealerships, pick out a car with a $10,000 umbrella, literally just an umbrella that costs more than many people's first cars, and the U.S. taxpayers cut him a check for $7,500 because it's an electric vehicle. That isn't fighting for the working class. That is corporate welfare for the elite dressed up in a green energy costume. This is exactly why the working class spoke so loudly on November 5th. People are done with the lectures. They are done with the finger wagging from career politicians who have never run a business or felt the sting of a budget. They want leaders like Moreno who understand that wealth isn't something the government gives you. It's something the government needs to get out of the way so you can go out and create it yourself. Moreno didn't just win a debate here. He exposed the entire socialist experiment as a total scam. We need more business-minded common sense in Washington and less sociology professor theories. But I want to hear from you guys. What did you think about that $7,500 Rolls-Royce credit? Does that sound like taxing the rich to you, or is it just more DC games? Drop a comment below and let's get the conversation started. I'll see you in the next one.